Welcome you all for today's class. Today we are going to see about the requirements engineering process. This requirement engineering process, this question used to come in your exam, and this question can be of your 8 marks or 10 marks of question. So the question will be like, explain the requirement engineering process with its 4 phases. So we have to see what is the 4 phases are there and how this requirement engineering process is going to work out. So first let's see what is the meaning of your process. What is the meaning of your process? It is nothing but if you are going to do any work with the instructions. How you are going to follow the instruction here in the software engineering? You have to involve some of the people, those who can develop your work, whatever you want to do according to your requirements. So when according to your requirements, if any work you are going to do, that is known as your requirement process. So why we have used engineering keyword here? Because as we are using some technology and some methodology to do, there will be some stages where we are going to follow to do the work. That's the reason it is known as your requirements engineering process. So now what are the activities it is going to follow? There will be some 4 phases and you have to elaborate all the 4 phases in detail. So what is the first one? Requirements elicitation. Next one is your requirement analysis. Next one is requirement validation. And the next one is requirements management. So here we are going to discuss about all the 4 phases which comes under your requirement engineering process. Moving towards your next slide, as you can see, this is nothing but it is also a spiral view of your requirement engineering process. As we have seen already in one of the class about the spiral view, what is that? Spiral model. Here also you can see one glance about your spiral model also. The model looks like this. So here why the model has been designed in this way? Suppose if you are in your requirement specification, and what you should do after that, you should go for your validation, then documentation or elicitation in this way. Suppose if you want in mid only any of the requirement which has not been specified, then you can go back and get all these things. So this process will be moving in this way. Okay. So now you can see here the first one, as you can see what is happening in this phase actually. So first one you can see this is a very structured analysis method. This is nothing but it is a very structured analysis method. Why it is known as your structured analysis method? Because you can see everything is very structured way has been written. All these things has been very structured way it has been written. And also in this system model, you can get all the additional informations. If you want to add any of the additional informations, that also you can add here. So this spiral view of your spiral model, you can see all the data, whatever is present here. You can see the start is there. So here you are going to start your process. Once you will start your process, according to what you are going to start your process, you have to take all the requirements. Which kind of requirements you want? You want the business requirement specifications. So here you can see once we will do the start, first we are going to collect all the requirements. Before going to this specification, the first step we are going to have is elicitation. So once elicitation process will be there, in this way you have to work all these things. So first one will be start. You are going to gather all the information. Then you are going for your user requirement elicitation, system requirement elicitations. So what is happening in your specification side? You have to go for your business requirement specification, then user requirement specification, what all are the system requirement specifications. You have to go through like this. If you want to go for the validations, when normally what will happen in your requirement validation, you have to validate what was there and how you are going to work out. So definitely to know what was there, you have to do the feasibility study. Once you will do your feasibility study, you have to go for your prototyping. Then you have to review, you have to do the comparative study also. Then you finally you have to do the documentations. So this is just a spiral review of your requirement engineering process. We will see in detail. Moving towards the next one, What is the out of these 4 stages? The 4 phases, the first one is our requirement elicitation. So now we will see what is the real meaning of your elicitation. This elicitation is nothing but your discovery. So here you can find out requirement elicitation and analysis. So now what is the elicitation means? As I told you, elicitation is nothing but discovery. What you are going to discover? You have to discover the requirements. In the first stage, before going to inside any of the process, you need to find out the requirements discovery. You have to find out, you have to discover the requirements. So what is the next point? It says involves technical staff working with customers to find out about the application domain, the services that the system should provide, and the system's operational constraints. What is the meaning of this? Whenever you are going to find out any requirements, you have to gather the information about your application domain, and also with that you have to find out the operational constraints. So in these things, whenever you will find out, you will understand what are the things really I want. So once you will identify all these possible requirements, you have to analysis on these requirements, what can be done. Once you will be find out, so normally what the software engineers will do, they will communicate with the end users or customers to find out all variety of informations. So what kind of information they will find out? They have to find out these things. What is that? The application domain, or the services from the system, what kind of services they want, or some of the expected performance, how you are going to give the performance, it is very slow or high performance. So all these things they are going to provide. And once these things will be done, from this information the constraint has to be decided. Constraints means what kind of operational constraints will be there, it is going to decide out of your application domain. So once all these things will be done, all these people, the end users, the managers, the software engineers, the maintenance people, the domain experts, the trade unions, all these people are nothing but they are known as your stakeholders of your project. Whenever you will start any project, you have to find out the stakeholders. So this is a commonly used one term. This is a commonly used one term for this software engineering. So now what is the meaning of your stakeholders? The stakeholder means the person who will be affected by the system. Who is going to be affected by the system? It can be your end user, it can be your system maintenance engineers, can be your software engineers, can be anyone who is dependent on this project. So what will happen is in this, so they are going to take care of all of your project. Moving to the next slide, you can see here requirement elicitation. We will go in detail now. So what is that? In this elicitation stage, it's having variety of stages. What are the stages? The first one will be your requirements discovery. The next one will be your requirement classification and organization. Next one will be your requirement prioritization and negotiation. And the last one will be requirement specification. So here what we are going to do is, the stakeholders has to find out about all these things, constraints, whatever the stages are behaving, and it has to do the work into that. And we know that all these processes are going to work how? It is going to work on your spiral view. Whatever the spiral model says, it's going to be work out in that. So that is one more diagram is there. We will see that diagram also. But before that, some of the problems are there which is occurring inside your requirements elicitation. We have to see the problem and we have to find out what are the, like how we are going to tackle that problems. So what is the first problems? The stakeholders don't know what they really want. So what is the meaning of this? The stakeholders sometimes they will be unable to find out the specifications from the customers what exactly they want, which is also known as your unrealistic demands. They will demand some of the in the mid of the project that I was wanting this thing, but you have not given this thing. So you need to change your project. So that is known as your unrealistic behavior or unrealistic demands, which one the stakeholders don't know exactly what the customer wants. What is the next kind of problems you will find out while doing the requirement elicitation? That is your stakeholders express requirements in their own terms. So what will happen is here, all the different stakeholders, those who will be there, they will specify their own different requirements. So in this way, what will happen? All these requirement engineers, those who will be there, they cannot solve the problem because it will it gives the conflicts inside the requirements. So if it will give the conflicts inside the requirement, then how you will proceed with your project? That is not possible, right? So here you can see the third point also. As the second point says that they will put their own express, they will express their own terms of requirements. So conflict will come. Okay, so all the different stakeholders will have the different views, and they will have conflict lastly inside the requirements. So this is also due to the improper discussions or communications in between the stakeholders. What is the next point? As you can see, this is like your economic and organizational and political factors may influence your system requirements. How it is going to influence your system requirements? You know, some of the time what will happen is, if there will be any change in the requirement or change in the stakeholders, all these things will affect your requirement analysis process. So if it will affect your requirement analysis process, then definitely it will affect to your organization. So if that is also one kind of behavior which is going to affect your requirement elicitation. What is the last one? You can see the requirement change during the analysis process. Okay, the new stakeholders may emerge and the business environment may change. What will happen in this? Here what will happen is, sometimes heavy requirements will come for the changes, okay, in the mid between of the project. So maybe the new stakeholders also may join that time. So all these things together will hamper our business or organizations. So these all are some of the problems which is going to be occur in your stakeholder side whenever we are moving towards your requirement elicitations. Now you can see, as I told you, the diagram, as we have the requirement elicitations, there are 4 stages. So this is one kind of your diagram is here. This is your requirement discovery, the first stage. Next one is your requirement classification and organization, second stage. Third is your requirement prioritization and negotiation. The fourth one will be requirement specification. These things has to work in this way only. Okay, so this is a clockwise directions, and it is going to work like your spiral model. Now next, see what all are your process activities. Whatever we have seen there, we are going to implement all these things now. In this process activities, as I told, 4 stages are there. The first one is your requirement discovery. What is the meaning of your requirement discovery? This one will interact with the stakeholders and to discover their requirements. First, it has to discover the requirements. What are the stakeholders wants? Then it will then the domain requirements are also discovered at this stage. Once they will discover the minimum requirements, then they will go for the domain expert stakeholders to find out their requirements. And with this communication, it will be very effective communication with the customers. They will do the this communication with the customers to find out all the requirements. Okay, they will identify all the requirements inside this requirement discovery. Moving towards the next point, it is requirements classification and organization. What will happen here is, all the unstructured requirements, whatever will be there, all the unstructured requirements can be categorized in this stage. And what can be done? We can put it in a systematic way depending upon their nature. How it is going to be happen? On that, we can organize everything into the form of your clusters, and we can proceed to the further. The first thing is unstructured items or requirements, whatever will be there, we have to group it together, make it as a systematically things, and then you can proceed like a clusters. So what will happen is everything, all the requirements will be classified and will be organized properly in this stage. So the next one will say that what will happen in the next stage is what all are the prioritized requirements will be there. We have to find out that first. Okay, once we have found the data in that way, what we are going to do, if some unrealistic requirement will be there, then negotiations cannot be made. We cannot make any negotiations in your unrealistic data which is coming under this. Okay, if there will be some realistic data or requirements, then we have to collect that realistic data and we have to make it as prioritized, and on that basis we have to proceed our like project. And suppose if any conflict will come or something will come, then that can be resolved by your requirement engineers. No problem will be there in your requirement engineers. So what will be the next point? That is our requirement specifications. In this requirement specification, all the requirements whatever will be there, the documentation will get created. So in the last one, we will create the documentation, and all these things we will put again the input into the next round of the spiral. We know only one spiral we have done. Again, one more spiral is there. Then once the documentation have done, we will put into the again. We'll go to the discovery, we will check it out. If any data is necessary, we will proceed in further. Then you can see here the next point is requirement discovery. What is the requirement discovery now? The process of gathering informations about the required and existing systems and distilling the user and system requirements from this information. It means that if you are finding all relevant information about the system, okay, if you are finding any relevant information about the system, then the source of information from where you are getting the information for requirement gathering, for all this requirement gathering if you are getting, then you can proceed of what you are going to do. You have to do the documentation, you have to go for the system stakeholders, and you have to specify all the requirements. So that process will be coming under your requirement discovery. I just repeat the point again. What you are going to do in this requirement discovery, you have to find out all the relevant informations about the system, and you have to find out the source of information from where you are getting. You have to put it all, you have to make it as a documentation, and this method is nothing but this is known as your requirement discovery. The interaction is with system stakeholders from managers to external regulators. So what will happen here, in between whom we are going to find out the interactions? In between the stakeholders and with the like customers. Okay, with the stakeholders and the customers, we are going to have the interactions in between them. The systems normally have a range of stakeholders. As I told you, the stakeholders, there will be many stakeholders, and what they will do, they are going to interact with themselves, and they have to find out the requirement discovery. So let's moving towards the next one. Here you can see which is coming under your requirement discovery. The first one is your interviewing. What is the interviewing now? This is nothing but formal or informal interviews with the stakeholders are part of most requirement engineering process. This RE is nothing but requirement engineering process. So what is happening here? This is one, as you can say, this is one effective method of your requirement gathering. If you will do this, then you can get more. If you will communicate this with the stakeholders by asking them various questions about the system, how to use and all, then you will get many requirements you can identify. Okay, so there will be two types of interviews. The first one will be your closed interview, where the stakeholders answers the predefined set of questions. There will be some predefined set of questions. He will be having the list of questions. He is going to ask only that many. That is one kind of interview. Second one will be like your open interview. There will be no predefined data or nothing, no agenda will be there. Various issues you can raise your issues and you can discuss with the stakeholders. So that is known as your open interviews. So here there are two types of interviews are there. So one more thing is there, what is the effective interviewing? Okay, how we can take the effective interviewing. By the way, why we are doing all these things? Because we want the requirement, we want to discover the requirements by discussing with the stakeholders and with the customers. So that interactions we have to take place in the form of our interviewing. So now how to call, what will be the characteristics of your effective interviewing, how it has to be. So the interviews should be conducted in a very free environment, okay, in a very free environment, and they should be conducted with open-minded approach. You should have the open-minded approach. And this requirement engineer should listen to the stakeholders with patience. If they will listen, then only they can answer the question properly and the requirement will come properly. But sometimes what will happen is, if the stakeholders are expecting some unrealistic things about the system, and they should be ready to change their mind and the ideas. Okay, they should be ready to change their ideas and about the systems and all these things. Why they have to do? Because if suppose they are going for the open interviews, then any various issues can come in any time. So that time all the stakeholders and customers, they have to be very open minded, and they should discuss the requirements. If they will discuss the requirements, they can form the proposal. Here you can see they can form the requirement proposal, and they can work together in a prototype system. Okay, in a set of rules. Prototype means what? In a set of rules, right? So in that way they can work together. And when they will have the questions, that is known as the springboard questions. Okay, in that springboard questions, they are going to discuss promptly. They have to answer the questions, they have to discuss the question, and they have to gather all the informations. That is nothing but it is everything is coming under your requirement discovery. Now one more is also there, interview in practice. What will happen in this interview in practice? Normally a mix of closed and open-ended interviewing. Both the mixed versions will be there. Okay, some will have the questions, some will not have the questions. So these interviews are good for getting an overall understanding of the stakeholders. So if both kind of peoples are present there, stakeholders are there, then it is good that you should have a set of questions and you don't have the set of questions. So in that way also you can understand the behavior of the stakeholder, what they actually want, the customer behavior of the customer also, you can interact with them. And these interviewers need to be very open minded, without preconceived ideas of what the systems will do. It means that you should have the idea that how you are going to work out. Okay, you should have the ideas, pre-ideas you should have. In a very open minded, you should discuss all these things, and you need to prompt to use whatever you are talking, and simply you should not keep your points. That should be a valid point whenever you are going to work out on that. Okay, so this is about your interview in practice. Next, what will happen in the problems? Actually, there will be some problems with the interviews, how you are going to check it out that. So some of the application specialists may use language to describe their work that is not easy for the requirements engineer to understand. Like if we are discussing about the software engineering, and if I will talk and if I will give you some problems on the mathematics, can you understand? No. So if you are discussing on the application based things, we should utilize the language on application based only. But there will be some people, they will use unethical way, and where there will be no link in between your requirements to understand. And interviews are not good for understanding domain requirements. Interviews, those are interviews. In interview, that is not required that what domain requirements are there, because whatever we will provide, the engineer, the domain expert engineers are going to work into that. So some domain knowledge has to be there, has to be familiar with the people. Otherwise, it will be very articulate to understand what exactly they want. Suppose if you want to work on one thing, one language, and if you are preferring some different language, then domain expert will not feel comfortable to do all this. So you should have the conversation always with in such a way that all should feel very comfortable to discuss. Now, uh, in here I can say one more thing also. In this way, this is also one point under to your requirement discovery. So this much is there under your requirement discovery. And also, if you want to add, there will be some diagrams. I'll show the diagrams, but for not for today's class. For today's class, this is only this much. If you have any